Isabella of France is remembered by one of history's harshest titles, the she-wolf. That legend is vicious, it is animal. It describes a woman who betrayed her king. She toppled his dynasty. She then ordered her husband's murder with a red-hot poker. Court documents, private letters, and financial records tell a darker, more complicated story. They show a girl raised as a political weapon. They show a queen publicly humiliated while other women gossiped and watched. She was a wife punished for her husband's incompetence. Historians later rebranded her as a monster to excuse his failures. The nickname arrived centuries later. The pattern that produced it began in her childhood. Isabella was born in 1295, a daughter of Philip IV of France. Her father was known as the Fair for his beauty. He was also called the Iron King for his cold, brutal nature. He burned the Knights Templar. He crushed all political opponents. He used his daughters purely as diplomatic tools. Isabella grew up inside that precise combination of elegance and brutality. She was groomed from birth as a political asset. Her every court appearance was carefully staged. Eyes focused on her posture, her clothes, her silence. Her value rested on two requirements: an obedient mouth and a royal womb. The first glimpse of her ruthless side came with the Tour de Nesle affair. 3 of her sisters-in-law were accused of adultery with 2 Norman knights. The allegation destroyed all their lives. Isabella's name appears at the investigation's beginning. Several chronicles describe Isabella noticing matching embroidered purses on the men. These gifts matched items her sisters-in-law were carrying. She reported this discovery to her father. He treated it as high treason. The investigation was swift and brutal. The 2 knights were castrated, flayed, and then publicly executed. Isabella's sisters-in-law were imprisoned for life or sent to distant convents. 2 wasted away inside captivity. Their bodies became a permanent cautionary tale. This was female dynamics at its sharpest. A young princess, trained to serve her father, pointed a finger at other women. Her testimony protected her own loyalty and reputation. It helped wipe out 3 rival princesses at once. 1 girl preserved her value. 3 others became scandals locked in stone. French courtiers never forgot the incident. They whispered that she had betrayed them for favor. The court praised her beauty, but remembered exactly who suffered when she spoke. Isabella's future in-laws heard those whispers. In January 1308, she crossed the Channel to marry Edward II of England. She was 12, he was 23. The marriage was purely political. It sealed an alliance between France and England. Isabella arrived groomed, jeweled, and politically useful. The coronation exposed fault lines immediately. Chroniclers describe Edward draping royal honours and jewels on his favourite, Piers Gaveston. Gaveston wore richer garments than the king. He sat beside the royal couple during the celebrations. This drew immediate hatred from English lords. At the coronation banquet, the seating told the story. The Queen's high-ranking French relatives watched her sidelined for a man they considered a low-born favourite. Gaveston sat close, whispering with the king. He treated dignitaries with open arrogance. Isabella's French attendants noticed every slight. They wrote home in detail. Those letters described pure humiliation. The king neglected her dowry rights. He showered Gaveston with jewellery and attention instead. The message was obvious to every woman in the hall. The king's favourite was playing the part of queen. Some of the coronation jewellery meant for Isabella ended up on Gaveston's body. Isabella sat in the place of honour, but her ornaments glittered on another man's chest. The noblewomen around her saw the insult. English ladies at court quickly copied the new favourite. They hoped for influence. Some mocked the foreign child queen behind closed doors. She had the title, but not the king's attention. The gossip skipped her beauty. It moved on to the more interesting target, the king's intimacy with another man. Female cruelty blossomed. The women who dressed Isabella that morning had to adjust those same jewels on Gaveston by evening. Not one of them protected her from the insult. They arranged the pieces. They secured the clasps. They passed the story on. The slight cut into a queen's dignity in a language every woman understood. Yet even with that public insult, Isabella performed her role. She produced an heir in 1312, Prince Edward. Other children quickly followed. Conception requires intimacy. She was not permanently locked out of the marriage bed. Her early letters to Edward are startlingly warm. She calls him our very dear and very sweet lord and friend. This is not neutral phrasing. The words suggest an emotional closeness, a partnership. The myths of the cold conspirator never quote that line. In 1313, a chronicler watched them during a French visit. He noted the king and queen missed an important morning meeting. His description was blunt. They had been dallying with each other at night and overslept. This is not the language of an empty bed. It undercuts the idea of a permanently frozen marriage. Two young, powerful people sharing enough physical enjoyment to miss public obligations. During the same trip, their silk pavilion caught fire. An eyewitness account survives. The flames spread at night. Edward escaped, naked, then ran back inside. He dragged Isabella out, also naked, from the burning tent. Whatever else he was, he did not leave his wife to suffocate in smoke. He ran through fire to save her. Around them, women saw everything. Her French ladies commented on the spectacle. A king and queen, bare and vulnerable, exposed in front of attendants. Inside the pavilion, the gossip began immediately. Some women whispered about the king's body, others about the queen's. Female eyes cataloguing every detail, female mouths sharing them instantly. The political crisis, however, continued to deepen. The pattern from France repeated again. Male failure, female blame. Edward lost authority at home and abroad. Military disaster struck at Bannockburn against the Scots. Nobles were furious about taxes and Gaveston's influence. Edward simply replaced one favourite with another, Hugh Despenser the Younger. Despenser wanted more than affection. He wanted control, lands and offices. He and his father targeted noble families and confiscated their estates. Isabella watched as Despenser's faction began seizing her own lands. Financial records show a sharp, deliberate change. The Queen's income was savagely cut. Her household staff shrank. Supplies once ordered freely now required approval from Despenser's men. Servants began reporting shortages. Other women watched and adjusted. Noble ladies distanced themselves from the Queen. They sought to protect their own families. Attendance at Isabella's household dropped. Despenser's wife, Eleanor, benefited instead. She gained favour, proximity, and security. Female loyalty bent toward power, not sympathy. Courtiers' wives kept quiet when they saw the Queen slighted. Ladies who once flattered her now competed for Despenser's attention for their husbands. The women of the court shifted their gossip. They mocked Isabella behind fans. They blamed her for Edward's failures while whispering about his male preferences. The Queen, whose husband chose men, became an easy target. The final break came in 1325. Isabella was sent to France. Officially, she acted as a peace envoy to her brother, King Charles IV. Privately, it became an escape. Once safe in France, she refused to return. She would not step foot in England while Despenser remained near the king. Records show her describing herself as a despised queen in diplomatic correspondence. She began building a coalition instead. Roger Mortimer, an English lord, joined her. He had escaped the Tower of London and fled abroad. He became her ally and likely her lover. A queen and a rebel were planning a return by force. From a distance, English writers painted her as adulterous and unnatural. They compared her to Jezebel. They used the imagery of the she-wolf. These descriptions were less about her behavior and more about male panic. A queen working openly with a man outside royal authority threatened the entire social structure. By 1326, their preparations were complete. Isabella and Mortimer landed in England with a relatively small force. Many expected their failure. Instead, nobles and commoners rallied instantly to her side. Hatred of Despenser did more work than their army. Edward II fled west. Support crumbled around him. London welcomed Isabella as a saviour from misrule. The woman, later called a monster, received cheers in the English streets. The fall of the Despensers was swift and theatrical. Hugh Despenser the Elder was captured and hanged from a high gallows. Hugh Despenser the Younger met a more elaborate, horrific fate. Contemporary records describe the execution in detail. He was hanged. He was then disemboweled. He was castrated. Finally, he was quartered. His genitals were burned before his eyes. His body parts were sent to different cities as a warning. Isabella stood near the centre of power as this unfolded. The system that destroyed her sisters-in-law's lovers now destroyed her husband's favourite. The humiliation she had endured was repaid with public butchery. With Despenser gone, Isabella and Mortimer forced Edward II to abdicate. In 1327, the king lost his crown to their son, Edward III. The official story claimed Edward II then died quietly at Berkeley Castle. A natural death was reported after the fact. No body was ever shown publicly. Doubts appeared almost immediately. Whispers of murder spread quickly through the country. Later chroniclers described a specific, horrific method. A red-hot poker was supposedly pushed into the king's body. It was driven through the anus, leaving no outward mark. That image stuck for centuries. It was perfectly cruel, perfectly memorable. The problem lies in the evidence. The most graphic account appears decades later. The scene reads like symbolic revenge. It punishes a king associated with male favourites through a sexualized execution. What remains clear is Edward died in captivity. He died far from public view. Isabella and Mortimer controlled the realm completely. They ensured the old king never returned. Their careful, guarded letters speak of great matters. They mention news that cannot be written. The gaps speak louder than the words. As Isabella's power grew, resentment swelled. Mortimer accumulated titles and enemies. Parliament grumbled about his arrogance. Nobles who helped Isabella now saw a new favourite occupying the same space. Female dynamics at court shifted yet again. Some ladies who had once shunned Isabella now returned, sensing advantage. Others whispered about Mortimer's influence. They were careful not to repeat the Despenser mistake. Witnesses later described courtiers' wives bowing slightly lower to Mortimer's mistress than before. Power redrew their loyalties one final time. In 1330, the entire pattern reversed. Edward III, now 17, seized control. He staged a night coup at Nottingham Castle. Mortimer was arrested in Isabella's chamber. She reportedly cried out for her son's mercy. Edward III ignored her pleas. Mortimer was tried as a traitor. He was executed by hanging. His body was left on the gallows for days. Isabella was not killed. She was too valuable to destroy entirely. She was placed instead under comfortable house arrest. Financial accounts from her later years survive. They show purchases of fine clothing and jewellery. She received large grants of land. She was permitted to travel. The supposed she-wolf spent decades as a wealthy dowager. She outlived both her husband and her lover. Her confinement looked more like a comfortable retreat than imprisonment. One final brutal detail stands out in her burial arrangements. When she died in 1358, Isabella was buried at the Franciscan church at Newgate. Her body was reportedly laid to rest with the heart of Edward II on her chest. The heart was enclosed in a casket. The woman accused of murdering her husband was carrying his heart in death, a public story of monstrous hatred attached forever to a private, intimate relic. Across her entire life, specific patterns repeated with chilling consistency. Male failure was always followed by female blame. Philip IV's brutal court used Isabella to destroy other women. Edward II's political disasters led directly to her demonization. Mortimer's greed drew hatred that landed on both their heads. Female betrayal threaded through every stage. A young Isabella exposed her sisters-in-law. English ladies abandoned their queen when Despenser rose to power. Women made choices that protected themselves. They sacrificed another woman in the process. The nickname She-Wolf of France emerged long after her bones turned to dust. Tudor chroniclers and later writers desperately needed a villain. A beastly queen suited that purpose perfectly. Her beauty became a weapon in their stories. Her intelligence became scheming. Her survival looked like unnatural hardness. The historical record reveals something colder and more familiar. A girl raised in a house where loyalty meant turning evidence on other women. A queen watching favourites strip her income while other wives sided with the winners. A widow in all but name learned the only way to survive that system was to flip the board. Isabella of France did terrible things. She also lived in a world that rewarded every one of them. Historians made her the monster so the men around her could remain tragic instead of responsible. Her legend became a warning about dangerous wives. Her life is a case study in how far a woman had to go when every softer method failed.